Region Marine Corps Recruiting Command, just to name a few. Major operations that he has served in include Operations Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Southern Watch, Desert Fox, Alaska Road, and Iraqi Freedom. Colonel Sinclair is a graduate of the Amphibious Warfare School, the U.S. Army Sapper Leaders School, the Marine Corps Command and Staff College, the School of Advanced Warfighting, and the National War College. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Sinclair.
Morning, ladies. Sit down, please. Thank you. Well, good morning. It's great to be here back at Maxwell to talk about something I dearly love, which is the school I'm very privileged to be the director of. If you don't know anything about the advanced intermediate level schools, as we call them, the advanced ILSs, this is going to be a useful brief for you. Whether or not you're interested or you think you're interested, you're going to run into graduates of these programs, both the School of Advanced Military Studies, SAMS, the School of Advanced Air and Space Studies right here, and SAW, School of Advanced Warfighting, which we're going to discuss today. And you're going to rub elbows with these folks. You're going to be involved in plans that they came up with. You may be on operational planning teams with them. You may be in joint planning groups, JPGs with them. So I think whether or not you're interested in applying or you're just considering it right now or you have other plans, I think it's useful just to have a bit of an understanding of the chemistry that goes into producing a warfighting planner as we do in the Marine Corps. Next slide, please. So this is how we're going to do it. Talk a little bit about what we do. We'll talk about who does it, our faculty, what we typically have as a class, our overall composition, which I think will surprise you with its diversity. We'll talk about how we deliver the curriculum and what it consists of. We'll talk about selection, and we are a self-selecting school as well as a selecting school. In other words, you have to apply, you have to want to come, and then we get to pick. And we're the only school in the Marine Corps that picks its own students. And then at the very end, I'll have a question and answer period where I hope to be able to answer any questions that you may have. Slide, please. So this is our mission statement. Like all good mission statements that we do as Marines, we agonize over every word. So there's a few words in here I will point out. But really, as a preamble to this slide, every year, starting in July and running through June, 11 months, we will train and educate 24 to 26 officers in the areas of operational art, operational planning, and future war. They come from all different military occupational specialties across the Marine Corps. We typically have 2 to 3 from different countries, and we oftentimes have all 4 services represented. And we have, I don't think in the 26 years of our program, ever had a year where we did not have Air Force officers present. Now a little about the mission statement. A few words I want to draw your attention to. We develop lead planners. Not just planners, lead planners. That means planners who are prepared to run OPTs, to run operational planning teams. And that is a very special skill in that it requires a lot of playground skills to work the collaboration and the energy and pull that social energy together to produce a plan that no one person in that room could come up with on their own. We also have a very good selection rate for command. Our selection rate is about 3 times higher for command coming out of SAW as it is for our typical Marine, which equates to about 70% of our graduates go on to battalion or squadron command. Will and intellect is important. Of course, we oftentimes think about intellect as the smarts, and we do select very bright officers to attend SAW. But it's not just the intellect. We don't give an LSAT, we don't give a GRE. We do have a few small requirements we look at in determining your intellectual capacity, but that's not the main thing we're interested in. We're interested in the will, the hard work. If anything, we are separated by the work ethic that our graduates demonstrate to solve the hardest problems that the commanders they serve encounter. To employ operational art, pulling together the activities across the battle space to make tactics matter in strategy, designing, executing campaigns. We spend a lot of time on the campaign level, and all of this to increase the Marine Corps' effectiveness in warfighting, our reason for existing. So we spend a lot of time on the operational level of war, that amorphous area between tactics and strategy, where we try to make sense of tactics to achieve strategic aims. Slide, please. We're pretty small. We are pretty small. We have just 6 on our faculty, our military and civilian faculty. So our student to faculty ratio is not what you might find in some of the other organizations and institutions, but how we deliver the curriculum sort of eliminates that, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So we have my deputy, who will be the one mostly involved with applications in terms of the mechanics of the application process, Lieutenant Colonel Juarez, post Lieutenant Colonel Commander, had 1st Light Armored Battalion at Camp Pendleton. He's a graduate of the Marine Corps War College, also a SAW grad. Lieutenant Colonel Jay Lynn actually is just reporting in this week, so I'm happy to have him. He's pre-command, but he's coming out of an operations officer bill at 3rd Marines. We have three professors. One who has a long history with the Air Force, Colonel Ray Johnson. Some of you may have run across him before. He's a retired Air Force colonel from the Special Ops side. He was an instructor at the School of Advanced Air and Space Studies right here for many years and has been with us since 2007. Dr. Meyer, areas of expertise involve German history, the breakthrough battle, and the defense in depth are his main areas of focus. And he has been with SAW since its inception in 1990, coincidentally the same year that SAS was created. And Dr. Gordon Rudd, who spends a good majority of the time with the students focusing on the campaign studies and the campaign analyses that factor in heavily into our staff rides, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. So that's our faculty. Both two, as I said, one I said was an Air Force retiree. Dr. Rudd is a retired Army officer. Slide, please. All right, so who makes up the typical SAW class? So this graphic, I think, has a lot on it that will be useful for you just trying to get an idea of the composition. By MOS on the left side, the occupational specialties, by service at the top, and then the international flags representing the international military students we've had attend. You see, of course, some trends there with Australia and Canada, who have a long history from the very first year of SAW of attending. They've had several general officers produced out of or SAW graduates, so they continue to put a lot of emphasis on who they send to come and compete for those typically 2 spots. We have about 26 students. We have 26 this year. We just moved into a brand new building, the Warner Center at Quantico, so we have some fantastic facilities. I have 26 carrels, individual carrels with sliding doors that I use to limit my students, and we divide into 2 13-man seminars. And everything is based on the seminars. We have been challenged to keep Navy officers or to attract high-quality Navy officers, partly a matter of timing, but certainly something, if you're interested, we could talk more about if you're a Navy officer in here and are interested. The 5 years you see here are depicted a little bit differently on the far right. For this current class that's in session, I laid out the MOSs by the full class, not just the Marines in the class, which the other ones, but also the other services as well as the international. So you see a pretty diverse group. Try to keep the Marine Air Ground Task Force in mind as we go through selections to keep a balance in the 2 seminars, so we have a little bit of representation of the ground, the air, as well as the logistics communities. You'll notice we have 7 aviators in this current class, which is an all-time high for SAW. Somewhat deliberate on my part as I go into my second year selecting, but I really wanted to bring out the aviation aspects for the MAGTAF a little bit more heavily in our seminars and in our planning exercises this year. So we have an F-35 pilot, the first XO of the 1st Training Squadron, who's in this year's class, as well as a variety of other aviation platforms, as well as a graduate of this institution from last year, and an Air Battle Manager, AWACS, pilot as well. So we've got a very heavy aviation component. We do spend a fair amount of time on air power theories, which Dr. Johnson, as I mentioned, retired Air Force colonel, performs for us. So you can see that it's not just about the ground side as we design the classes. So what do we teach? Slide, please. So this is really a campaign slide, if you will, and depiction. So you see the months across the top. We have 3 courses that run simultaneously: operational art, operational planning, and future warfighting. We have about 22 papers that are involved in the overall curriculum that are interspersed. All these courses run simultaneously, which is a little bit different than the way SAS does, which allows us to keep the professors rotating in and out of the different courses, and only one professor teaches one package, so we don't have different professors teaching the same material. So the OPTs, or the seminars rather, exist exclusively at one time, and we have 2 of them. And so we typically have an A-B seminar day where two subjects are taught by 2 different professors at different times, and then they flip-flop. The operational art, I'll have a slide on each of these courses, but that's where about 80% of our time is spent. That's where the majority of our curriculum focuses on, and that is mostly campaign studies and history. About 80% of those seminars are historically founded. We do oral exams. We do them twice, at the middle of the year in December, and then at the end of the year, where the students sit down with the faculty and demonstrate in about a 45-minute Q&A session their mastery of the material for the past semester, or in the case of the final orals for the entire year. We have a number of planning exercises that really help determine the students' ability to do what is our mainstay, which is planning. And so those are interspersed in the operational planning line of effort that are punctuated with 3 very, very dense and energetic staff rides. We have the first one coming up next week, which is all in Virginia, the Grant Lee's 1864 Overland Campaign. I'll talk about that a little bit later, as well as a European staff ride, mostly focused based on political situation in Turkey. Right now we're sticking with Italy and France, and then Asia Pacific, where we travel across about 20,000 air miles across the Pacific, focused mostly on the Second World War and Vietnam. The Future Warfighting is a unique course that no other advanced intermediate level school has, although certainly they have future-oriented lesson plans. We have an entire course dedicated to thinking about the future. A lot of innovation and adaptation solutions have come out of this course. We typically have a long list of potential topics that the students are offered, not compelled, to study and write about. We have futurology lesson plans and a number of guest speakers who come in and talk about the direction 10, 15 to 20 years out of where the nation is headed from a national security perspective. The students in that course write their longest paper, which is 15 pages, and that is delivered by oral presentation toward the end of the year, as well as the delivery of the paper to follow. A number of themes you see at the bottom there are interspersed throughout all 3 courses that recur. We have been focused on counterinsurgency for a long time, well before 2003 when it came back into vogue. And we do have quite an advance, about 5 seminars focused just on counterinsurgency practices, ranging from the Boer War to Malaya to Vietnam and even Iraq and Afghanistan. So we also are a very book-oriented program. So if you're inclined to like reading about these sorts of things, you will have your opportunity at SAW. We read about 21,000 pages, and we provide the time built into the curriculum to do the reading. So we have a page count of 25 pages per hour factored into all our student preparation time for seminars, and that is the pace at which they have to read in order to conduct all their reading within a 40-hour academic week, if they are able to do that. We have writing time as well, but the bulk of the time is spent actually outside of the seminar and preparing for seminar. And based on the type of students we select and the tempering that those students do for each other. You don't really typically find, in fact, I would say I've not heard of students coming in unprepared for seminar, having not done the reading. So that's something we're quite proud of. So this is I'll take you through each of these courses quickly. This is just a list of the campaigns and the history that we study in the operational art. Again, this is about 80% of the curriculum, and it's focused primarily on campaigns. So we do spend quite a bit of time on World War II. It's captured just with the simple title World War II. There is a lot we do, both the European and the Pacific theater, and of course those are supplemented by 2-3 week staff rides to those areas, and we get to walk the battlefields and really put on the cloak of the commander who went through those battles and campaigns, and try to experience through operational decision games some of the challenges those commanders and their staffs had to make at the time. So we take it from the Revolutionary War, where we focus on national values and really the origins of who we are as a people, all the way through to current operations in Afghanistan. Interspersed with that is critical thinking, decision making, 7 seminars on air power theory, which a lot of it coming from the SAS curriculum brought over by Dr. Johnson, which we're very grateful for, as well as operational culture and a lot on systems theory and complex problem solving and nonlinear structures of wicked problems. So all this is operational art, which informs, slide please, how we do the planning, which is really the mechanics of turning the experience of history and the laboratory of history into actionable and feasible, acceptable, supportable plans to prosecute the strategy as determined by our senior leaders. So we do that through a number of different planning exercises. We have 2 new ones this year that aren't on the slide. A mass atrocity response operation in an African scenario. Think of Rwanda, and where we're using a special purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force for rapid intervention, where time has priority over mass. And then we're doing a history revisionist campaign in Burma, taking on Singapore in a little different way than Mountbatten did back in 1944-45. And the students, given the same orders of battle as those commanders had at the time, will then be asked to solve a different problem and conduct a different mission than was actually done in history. And it provides some very interesting challenges for the students. But this is where the students intersperse with about 24 seminars that I teach and my deputy teaches, and soon my operations officer, when he's up to speed, will be teaching, that have to do with how to plan. So it's from campaigning to operational decision making to actually finding centers of gravity. And we spend a good amount of time with the MAG to AF staff training program, the MSTP, which is our MEF training, or Marine Expeditionary Force training staff right there at Quantico, that goes out and certifies the MEFs for warfighting. And they spend 3 weeks with the senior mentors who are retired 3-stars with the students, which is quite unprecedented. So the students have that amount of time with retired 3-stars, MEF commanders, one-on-one in some cases, 1-on-13, the size of the OPTs, working through problems and mentoring in that fashion to become more adept when they hit the operating forces to conduct these sorts of things for real. Slide, please. So then future war, I talked a little bit about this. This is largely our smallest course, but primarily individual research, punctuated with a few seminars on futurology and guest speakers who come in. Being located just 35 miles south of Washington, D.C., we have a quite an accessible group of potential speakers who come down to provide guest lectures and the like. So it helps with the forming of ideas for the students and really seeing what's out there and where they might contribute. We try to push the students into an area that they haven't ever studied before. We don't want the students to bring the last problem that they were working on, or the last thing their last boss was working on in the organization they served in before they went to school. We like them to take on new things, and through that that learning experience, get the kind of practice that they're going to need when they get out to the operating forces and they put this into practice, where they get problems put in front of them which they're expected to turn product on that they've never seen before, that are completely different than anything they have experienced. And that is the norm. And so the kind of muscle memory we look to develop through future war is taking on things you know nothing about, and then having a process, having the discipline to do the in-depth reading, to do the in-depth study, to have the work ethic, to study something well enough to understand it and provide a solution. And that is in very real terms demonstrated by the future war presentations, which the students do in the spring. So while it sounds like a very modest paper, only 15 pages, they go through 3 drafts plus an oral presentation. And so it translates into a little bit more writing than just 15 pages, as well as a tremendous amount of research. And writing 15 pages can sometimes be a little tougher than writing more than that. So that's the future war course. So I was quite well known for our campaign rides. Slide, please. And so we have this one coming up next week. It's the 1864 Overland Campaign, where Grant tried repeatedly to turn the Confederate right flank and fight them out of their trenches and gain that asymmetric tactical advantage that he could achieve by doing that. And we take it from the wilderness all the way down to Petersburg, hitting virtually every battle along the way. During this time, this first staff ride, the students do not present. The faculty presents, and we show them what a staff ride looks like and how to present at each stop an analysis of what happened, and then the students conduct operational decision games at those stops and talk about what they might do, sometimes individually, sometimes collaboratively with their peers. We walk them through this campaign. Just a two-day evolution, but one that introduces them to the staff ride concept and the Civil War being the laboratory. Slide, please. In January, dead of winter, we head off to Europe. So we start in Sicily with Operation Husky. We work our way to Salerno with Operation Avalanche, and then work our way to Anvil Dragoon in southern France. We do Monte Cassino, we do the Rapido River crossing, and then move up to, and that's all the Second World War, focusing on amphibious operations as well as all the various components that went into making that campaign successful. We are the only school that I know, advanced ILS, that spends any amount of time on the Italian campaign, which can be very informative for potential operations in Korea. Somewhat a understudied campaign in terms of the amount of resources put into it for the return on that investment and the type of fighting that was conducted by the Germans. We do a planning exercise associated with this, a pretty lengthy one. That you saw in one of the earlier slides, Gothic Wildcat, again a revisionist historical planning problem where the students have to get a different mission and use the same force set that our World War II forebears had, but to conduct a completely different mission in conducting amphibious operation in northern Italy. So we then move over to France, and we start with some World War I. Bella Wood, of course, quite a historical, significant battle for the Marine Corps, really our forming battle in the First World War. We do Verdun, and then we do World War II Sedan, the breakthrough in 1940, and we spend a good amount of time at Sedan looking at the breakthrough and looking how that was achieved and how France was penetrated in that campaign, and eventually a 6-week campaign leading to the final capitulation of France. And then we end up at Dieppe. We studied Dieppe, the failed amphibious raid. Again, a unique aspect of, so I don't know that campaign is studied or that particular battle is studied anywhere else. And then we do Normandy, and we spend about 4 days in Normandy traveling around the different sites, focused on both the landing, Omaha and Utah, as well as the breakout Operation Cobra. We end up in Paris, and then that concludes our staff ride. 19 days in Europe. Staff ride number 3, slide please, takes us to Asia Pacific. We've done a variety of different things in Asia Pacific. My class was the first to go to Vietnam about 13 years ago, and we've gone every year since, which has been remarkable as that country has opened up, and we get a chance to travel both to the French battlefields as well as the U.S. battlefields, north and south. This year we're going to Okinawa. Last year we did that as well, first time ever. Based on weather, we were getting weathered out of the Palau Islands quite a bit, so we've decided to shift to Okinawa. Of course, the culminating and largest battle of the Second World War. And on our way there, depending on weather, which I think more of you can appreciate than my Marine audiences, we go through the Aleutian Islands, and we stop in Shemya, and we do a study of Attu and Kiska, and the only U.S. territory held by the Japanese, and what it took to dislodge them out of Attu. So we do a little bit of the Aleutian campaign on the way to Oki, and then down to the Philippines. About 4 days in the Philippines, we do Corregidor, we do Bataan, and then to Vietnam, where we start in Hanoi. We do Dien Bien Phu, and then we jump back down to the south, and we're in the U.S. time, looking at the 68 Tet Offensive from Hue to Khe Sanh. We spend quite a bit of time in those areas, traveling up and down Route 9, understanding both the lines of communication challenges and the type of terrain that had to be experienced by I Corps in that area, and by the Marines in particular. We end up in the Delta, down in Ho Chi Minh City. We spend 2 days down in the south before heading off to Saipan. 3 days on Saipan, studying that campaign, and Tinian, before heading back to the States through Hawaii. Spend a couple days at Marfor Pac and looking at what the Marine Force Pacific are up to. And then if we have time, we'll stop in Yuma and see WTI, or Weapons Training Instructor Team, out there at Yuma, and then on back to the States. So that would be our March and early April staff ride. So that's how we put it all into sort of physical terms, to see the terrain, appreciate what went on, to gain a understanding of the challenges. It is unique to SAW, but it is also something that we feel is really indispensable to the development of the MOS, which we create out of this for the Marines, which is the 0505 Marine Air Ground Task Force Planner. Slide, please. So you ask, who may come? Hopefully that's the next question in your mind. We can, you see a number of different things. I'll call on a few of them. You have to have your major, lieutenant commander not having failed selection, and not a lieutenant colonel select. For the U.S. students, secret and top secret SCI eligible, you have to have completed the command and staff course for Marines. That could be the distance education program. For non-Marines, it's the resident program, such as what you are in here. Of course, having an undergraduate degree, we are accredited. We do have a master's degree awarded in operational studies as a result of your time at SAW. And for international students, there's some who do not speak English as a first language. You see the TOEFL requirements, 83 for the internet and 220 on the computer-based test. Basic qualifications. Slide, please. If you're interested in anything that I've said, if this sounds challenging, if you enjoy military history, you like making a difference, being a high impact player, then this may be something you're interested in. One time, my commanding general told me that the only calls that he gets to the Marine Corps University is about more SAW grads. We've got, similar to Air University, we have our War College there, we have our Command and Staff College there, we have Expeditionary Warfighting School there, we have a number of different other programs, but the demand signal for SAW grads, for the high impact that they have on staffs, continues. And there's always pressure to get bigger and expand the number of billets out there, and we're a little resistant to that. 24 to 26 is the max, and we like being small, we're agile, in that we can do things with a group that size that you can't do with a larger group. And you see most of that in the staff rides. The seminars as well are small enough to allow for that sort of the sort of interaction that we like to have, and the student to faculty ratio, even being what it is, allows to get to know the students quite well. But if you want to be a problem solver, you want to take your education that you're receiving here to another level, both both intellectually as well as from a practitioner standpoint and a warfighter, then this is something that you ought to consider. I recognize that there will probably be other presentations by SAS and SAMS. I'll be going to SAMS tomorrow and meeting with the CGSE students, and I encourage you to apply to all. It's very competitive to get in. Typically, it's about, for Marines, it's about 1 out of every 5 get entered into the program based on the number of applicants. For the Air Force, it's quite a bit tougher than that because we typically only have 2 seats that we fence out for the Air Force, providing that, of course, no one gets a guaranteed seat, providing the quality is there. So it is competitive, but I encourage you, if you're thinking about advanced education such as this, we are different than SAS. We have a different focus, operational level of war, planners, practitioners, really taking tactics and giving meaning to engagements, to battles, to campaigns, for strategic purposes. So a little bit of a different approach. But by applying to all, you may have more options. There's obviously you get selected. There's no obligation. You can turn this down, of course, but it gives you perhaps more options than you might otherwise have. For any Marines in the audience who may be interested, and we typically have a few, you can apply to SAW. Unlike past years where the MAR admin specifically stated that you would only apply to the school, the advanced school at the intermediate level school that you were at. In other words, if you're here, you can only apply to SAS. That no longer holds true. And I've personally talked to General Brolakis, our head of manpower, to ensure, who's a SAW grad himself, to ensure that we have that clearance that if you apply, we encourage you to apply to all, but if you apply to SAW and get accepted from here, you can be PCS there for a second year in the school. The bottom one on team building, I want to call it, I came up in some of my discussions with Colonel Yancey and some of the others here as we were getting ready to come in here. Probably one of the greatest benefits that comes out of this education is your collaborative skills with peers, because the time you spend working some tough problems and interacting in a very close level. And if there's one area, I mentioned work ethic, I mentioned intellect is important, but not dominant. It's the ability to work in teams and the ability to pull a team together as an OPT leader that really sets our graduates into a category that I'm very proud of, that I would consider an essential, critical skill. And where I've seen SAW grads not succeed in some very rare occasions, it's because of that's been lacking, where they are extremely bright, extremely capable, and have the ability to take things to the next level, but they consider themselves the smartest guy in the room, and it shows. And when you've got that problem and you've got that aura about you, you can shut people down. So that's a very important aspect, that both the humility as well as the ability to deliver and pull a group together of very different types of people and turn product in a very short amount of time in front of typically a 3-star or a 4-star general officer is something that we put a lot of time and attention into. Slide, please. Okay, so the Marine Administrative Message, MAR Admin 414, was just released on Monday. I know it's a little bit early and you're still early in the curriculum, but it's out there, and the applications are due by the end of September. So not that far away, 6 weeks or so. So you need to be thinking about this pretty quick. MAR Admin lays out the application requirements. It's a little bit, there's a few differences from last year. I've essentially simplified, I would think, a few things in terms of dealing with Blackboard and how you do the essay. There is an essay and an essay question that you'll receive once you indicate an intention to apply. You'll receive an essay question which you have to work on your own and only on your own, and then submit your essay back to us, as well as the other material required, service record for Marines last 5, observed fitness reports, et cetera, et cetera. If you make the initial screening cut, we will schedule an interview, and sometimes we have to accept the fact that we can't interview everybody. So we do some triaging. I think stratification may be a word that you're more familiar with in terms of who we talk to, and we typically will interview as many as we can. We spend about 2 months doing interviews virtually every day based on the numbers, in person, on Tandbergs, VTCs, or in some cases telephonic. We've done interviews, people overseas, people in deployed statuses, and even people on ship. Once selections are made, before they're announced, we do vet those through individual service headquarters to make sure there's nothing we don't know about that may preclude the selectee from attending, and then everything is announced in December. Really between Thanksgiving and Christmas is when we go hard and final on our final selections, and we pare down the list and we make the announcements typically in the middle of December. And then the class will convene July 5th. So as I said, it's an early July to early June program, 11 months. And last slide. These are our points of contact. Ms. Zena Gibbs, who is my administrative assistant and sort of do-all, has some longevity there, is the one who is receiving the emails that you send with your intent to submit an application. That's the first thing we ask. You'll receive, once you send an intention in, from there you'll be provided additional information as what's required of you. The MAR admins, I have some here with me that I brought if you would like to take one. I don't have enough for potentially everybody. We typically have a very healthy number of Air Force applications each year, which I'm very, very grateful for and proud of. And but we'll leave a few more admins if you want to check it out. For Marines, something new this year, and it's not the first time, but if you come to SAW and you are a Lieutenant Colonel Select when you arrive, which could, based on the board timing, occur, selected as a major, arrive at SAW as a Lieutenant Colonel Select, your payback tour will trump command selection. So you will have a 2-year minimum payback before eligible for command selection. So you may be in zone for Lieutenant Colonel screening, or correction, for command screening. You'll be deferred until 1 year into your payback, which will allow for a 2-year minimum payback. That has been the case in past years. Our Commandant General Neller just reinstituted that 2 weeks ago or so, which was one of the reasons for the delay of the MAR admin, to ensure that this level of education invested in a Marine officer is we get a return on that with a 2-year payback. Selection rate is still quite high for Lieutenant Colonel, but a reflection also on the quality of the officers who we select for the program. So that slide, please. That wraps up our presentation here today. I welcome any questions. I'll stick around for any follow-ups that you may have at the very end if necessary. I know it's lunchtime and there's probably some growling stomachs out there, but I do appreciate your attention and welcome your applications and screening. And statistically, there's one in this room who will be one of the SAW students next year, almost consistently, and oftentimes there's 2. So I look forward to seeing your applications. Good luck with the school year, and I'll take a Q&A now.